Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Journey Through Torah. This week, we are in Parsha Shoftim, Judges. It's Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9. And there's a lot to be said in this Parsha. We're going to talk about the national leadership of Israel, and we're going to talk about what they asked for and what they got. But we're also going to talk about, ultimately, it is Yeshua that fulfills all of these roles, not just nationally for Israel, but for us personally and individually. We are all members of the body. We each have our own specific roles and functions, but Yeshua calls us in to be part of a people. So we have these roles, we have this personal relationship with Yahweh. We need to walk that out daily. But in doing that, we need people. We need to walk this out. We need to do this with one another. So there's a lot to be said in this Parsha. So it tells us how we are to be united and how the structure is. And ultimately, there's going to be leaders among the people who are appointed to help keep the people on track, to help keep the people with common goals. Like I said, we all have our own ideas of the way things should go. We all have our own ideas of what our roles and purposes are within the body. And could be nothing wrong with that at all. But we need to have people to help keep us in a common goal. Because let's just face it, there are times in life where we don't always get along with one another, or where we disagree on some things and how something should be done or carried out or whatever that is. And we need to be able to focus on the important things for the betterment of the community, for the betterment of the body as a whole. And this is when we have people to help us do that. And ultimately, we know that throughout the history, we see that there were people who were appointed to Israel for certain roles, positions, judges, things like this, which was what Yahweh said to do. And then we have some good ones and we have some bad ones. Unfortunately, that's the way it is with the history of the human race. You've had some good ones, you've had some bad ones. We have some kings that did good in the sight of Yahweh, and then you have some kings who did not do good in the sight of Yahweh. But ultimately, Yahweh did tell us to come together, and we are to serve him wholeheartedly as one people, not one people divided into factions. So, So let's get into this a little bit. Deuteronomy 16:18 to 20 says, "Judges and officers you are to appoint within all your gates that Adonai your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they are to judge the people with righteous judgment." We'll get back to that in a minute. "You are not to twist justice, but you must not show partiality or take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and distorts the words of the righteous. Justice you must pursue, so that you may live and possess the land that Adonai your God is giving you." We'll get back to that in a minute as well. So first off, judges and officers. Shoftim v'shotrim is what's given here. Shoftim is the word for a judge. A shofet is a judge, and shotrim is the word for officer. The interesting thing is, a judge upholds what the law was. The judge doesn't make new laws. Okay, a judge upholds and helps to interpret the application of the law. The officers enforce that. So here's an interesting thing. You have like the scribes and the Pharisees and things like that. Well, shotrim is also what they called a scribe. So these are the ones who wrote the Torah letter by letter. They penned it out. But also shotrim is the modern Hebrew word for like a police officer. Shotrim, so like an officer. So again, just to kind of tie all this in together, all right? So how does all this apply to us? Well, guys, we need to have direction. All right, and ultimately, we need to follow Yeshua in all of these things. In every part of our life, we need to follow him. That's what he wanted for us. We can't just run around aimless and run around with no direction or run around with no goals or anything like that. That doesn't produce life, and that doesn't help us be focused on the main things. Showing a heart towards Yahweh, loving one another, showing that we can live in the kingdom of Yahweh here and now, all of these things. So we do need to follow Yeshua above all else, but we also need to join hands with one another and to do that too. Mark 6:34 says that Yeshua came ashore and he saw a large crowd and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, so he taught them. Yeshua did not want his sheep to be without a shepherd. That's why he even said, it is important that I go away, for I go away, I will send the comforter to you, right? He doesn't want us to be without direction because we need that, right? Numbers 27:15-17, Moshe spoke to Adonai saying, may Adonai, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the community to go out and come in before them who will lead them out and bring them out so that the people of Adonai will not be like sheep without a shepherd. Again, this is when Yehoshua was appointed, and Moshe is saying to Yahweh, his idea was so that there would be someone in Israel who can lead the people, lead them into the promises, lead them out when they go to war, to battle, someone to look after the people and to watch over them and to protect them and keep them focused on all of these things. But like I said, ultimately, we're following Yeshua in all of this, right? We're talking about the national leadership of Israel. We're talking about as a people, one people, the national leadership of Israel are some of the things we're going to be talking about here. Ezekiel 37:21-22 says, say to them, thus says Adonai Elohim, behold, I will take Israel from among the nations where they have gone, and I will gather them from every side and bring them to their own land. I will make them one nation in the land and on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king to them all. They will no longer be two nations and never again be divided into two kingdoms. Guys, so there is one king that we're going to unite under. Who is it? Yeshua. He is our king. So we're going to unite under him and be gathered together as one people. And we're going to get along. We're going to learn. We're going to work together for the glory of Yahweh. So there's some things we're going to talk about in this Parsha. There, you see some things regarding the national leadership of Israel, which means who were the ones to regard the national leadership of Israel? Well, we're talking about prophet, priest, king, judge. You know, all of these were dealing with the national leadership of Israel. And we can see pictures of Yeshua in all of these. You know, as an example, Yeshua as prophet, we see in Deuteronomy 18:15-18 that Moshe is talking about a prophet of one coming like himself, whom Yahweh will raise up from among his brothers. It's talking about Yeshua. Okay, in Isaiah 61:1-3, it says there's an anointed one who will preach good news to the poor, proclaim liberty to the captives. This one is Yeshua. Yeshua even read that in the synagogue, right? Said, today this is done in your sight, right? Today this is being done. Jeremiah 1:9 says that Yahweh puts his words in the mouth of his prophet. And Yeshua said, I speak only what the Father told me to speak. You know, it's like his words is what's being said. John 1:21, 25, and 6:14, the people are recognizing Yeshua as the prophet who is to come. Acts 3:22-23, Peter connects Yeshua's to Moses' prophecy in Deuteronomy 18. So the one we just referenced, Deuteronomy 18, Peter's making the connection of saying Deuteronomy 18 is talking about Yeshua. All right. And then Yeshua as priest, there's a lot of parallels in there. Just a couple references I'm going to give you. Psalm 110:4 says, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Genesis 14:18-20, again, talking about Melchizedek, the priest of the Most High, blessing Abraham. Many believe that was Yeshua who did that. Zechariah 6:12-13 says there is a branch who will be both king and priest upon the throne. Guys, you couldn't be a king and a priest. These are two separate roles, right? A priest was from the tribe of Levi, right? You have the Leviim and the Kohanim. The Kohanim are descendants of Aaron, who was a Levite. Okay, so still the priesthood was a Levitical order that was given there. So you couldn't have a Levite who was a king. So who do we know that's priest and king? Again, pictures of Yeshua. He is the branch who will be priest and king. Excuse me. Hebrews 7:11-17 says Yeshua, he was the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. And Hebrews 9:11-14 says Yeshua is our high priest who enters the greater tabernacle with his own blood, providing atonement forever for us. Again, pictures of him operating as priest. What about king? Again, a lot of references we can give in regarding to Yahweh is our king, Yeshua is our king, a lot of things in there. But here's just a couple. 2 Samuel 7:12-16 says there is a promise to David of an eternal throne and kingdom through David and his descendants Guys, look at the genealogy from Yeshua. He is descended from David, right? Psalm 2, 6, and 7 says, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. Well, who is the king set on Zion, on the holy hill? Again, Yeshua. Isaiah 9, 6, and 7, a child is born whose government will be upon his shoulder and David's throne forever. Again, talking of Yeshua. Matthew 2, verse 2, the wise men seek he who was born king of the Jews. Because that was the prophecy. John 18, 36 and 37, Yeshua declares his kingdom before Pilate. He says his kingdom is not of this world. So again, he is our king. What about judge? Isaiah 11, 3 and 4 says there is a righteous judge who will not judge by sight, but will judge with righteousness. And he is our righteous judge, right? Psalm 96, 13 says he is coming to judge the earth and he will judge the world in righteousness. Daniel 7, 13 and 14 says the Son of Man receives dominion and judgment from the Ancient of Days. John 5, 22 and 27, Yeshua says that the Father has given all judgment to the Son. And in Acts 17, 31, Yahweh has appointed a day when he will judge the world in righteousness by the man he has ordained. Again, speaking of Yeshua. Okay. So we see the fulfillment of all of this in Yeshua. Ultimately, yes, absolutely. And we need to follow him that way. But in order to run things here on earth right now, there were leadership that was established among Israel right here. And they were given specific tasks to uphold righteousness, to protect the people, and to keep the focus for the people on Yahweh, right? This is why they were put here in the first place. Now, let's take a look at something. Why did you have to have leadership among Israel? Because you get two or more people together, ultimately you're going to have some disagreements. So like I said before, we need some people to keep us focused, right? Not necessarily to always just say, you're right, you're wrong. I mean, there are sometimes we disagree on something, but neither one of us is wrong, just different viewpoints on what to do. So what do? Okay, so this again, there has to be people to kind of help move things in proper order. Deuteronomy 4, 5 through 8 says, see, as Adonai has commanded me, I have taught you statutes and ordinances to do in the land that you are about to enter and to possess. You must keep and do them, for it is your, look at this, your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the people. So he says, if you're doing what Yahweh is telling you to do, this is showing your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the people who will hear these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has God so near to them as Adonai our God is whenever we call on him? What great nation is there that has statutes and ordinances that are righteous like all of this Torah that I'm setting before you today? Okay, so he says, we hear the word and we must keep and do them because it is our wisdom and our understanding in the eyes of the nations, in the eyes of the people. So wisdom is chokhmah. Understanding is bina. Bin is also the word to discern. Okay. And in the eyes of the nation, le'enei ha'amim. So let's kind of break this down for a minute. All right. What is wisdom? Wisdom comes from Yahweh. Ask of the Lord, he will give you wisdom. Yes. But he has written his word for us so that we can learn his wisdom. We can learn his ways. And it will teach us to discern, which is our understanding. And when we're walking in his wisdom and discernment, we're walking in his righteousness, then the nations will see and proclaim glory to Yahweh. Okay. When we're walking in the ways of Yahweh, we're not walking in our own ideas and our own wisdom, because let's face it, sometimes there are some things that the scripture tells us to do that makes no sense to us. Kind of like love your enemies, right? Okay. So, but when we're walking in the ways of Yahweh, we're walking in his wisdom. Hosea 14:10 says, who is wise? Let him discern these things. Who is intelligent? Let him know them. For the ways of Adonai are straight, and the just walk in them, but the wicked stumble in them. So the just, the righteous, the upright walk in the ways of Yahweh, but the wicked stumble in the ways of Yahweh. They do not walk in his ways. Romans 11:33 says, oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and how incomprehensible his ways. We need to pursue him to learn his ways. In Luke 1:16 and 17, it is said of Yochanan, of John, that he would go before Yahweh to call the people to repentance and to turn the people to the phrases, wisdom of the righteous. Wow. To turn the people to the wisdom of the righteous? Well, what is the wisdom of the righteous? Comes from Yahweh. The wisdom of the righteous is the word of Yahweh. Because like we said in Deuteronomy, if we do what he's telling us to do, then it will be righteousness for us, right? When we're learning to walk with him, doing what he said, that is righteousness. James 3:13-18 says, who among you is wise and understanding? By his good conduct, let him show his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. So again, we're talking about understanding and wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not boast and lie against the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. See, that's not Yahweh's wisdom. That's what we call earthly wisdom, which goes against what Yahweh says. Because for jealousy, where jealousy and selfish ambition is there is disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom from above, what is it? The wisdom from above is what? First, pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial, not hypocritical. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in shalom by those who make shalom. So again, we're talking about wisdom, we're talking about righteousness, we're talking about understanding, and all of these things working together, right? So bina is the word for understanding. Like we said, bin means to discern something as well. So to understand, you discern it and you understand it. Proverbs 14:6-7 says, a scoffer seeks wisdom, yet finds none. But knowledge is easy to the discerning. Walk away from a fool, for you will find no knowledge on his lips. 1 Timothy 4:15-16 says, practice these things. The word there for practice means to meditate on and understand. Okay, that's how that word is broken down there. It's like repeat them, but also meditate on them and understand these things. Be absorbed in them so that your progress may be clear to all. Give attention to yourself and your teaching. Persevere in these things, for in doing so, you will save yourself and those who hear you. So it is your wisdom and your understanding, not just for you. It is your wisdom and understanding for the people in the nations. Why? Because Yahweh is calling people to turn to him through you. People are watching you to see the one that you serve. And when you do that, it honors him and it glorifies him, right? And that's exactly what he's telling us to do. The people will watch you and they will turn to Yahweh because you're walking in his ways and they're seeing his goodness, his love, his mercy, his kindness, his righteousness, his holiness, all of these things. And there will be people who will long for that and then they will turn. So does this in the eyes of the nations. Ezekiel 39:27-29 says, when I have brought them again from the people and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and I am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations. Then they shall know that I am Yahweh their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, but I have gathered them into their own land and have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit on the house of Israel, says the Lord God. See that? When he returns the people and gathers them in and brings them all together, he says that it is in the sight of the nations he will be honored and glorified in that. Isaiah 51:4-5 says, hearken to me, my people, and give ear to me, O my nation. For a law shall proceed from me, and I will make my judgment to rest for a light of the people. My righteousness is near, my salvation is gone forth, and my arms shall judge the people. The isles shall wait on me, and my arm they shall trust. Again, not just for you, but for the nations as well. Isaiah 42:5-6 says, thus says God, Adonai, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it and ruach to those who walk in it. I, Adonai, called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and give you as a covenant to the people, as a light for the nations. Again, yes, talking of Yeshua, but this is how we're supposed to walk as his people as well. Matthew 4:15 and 16 says, land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people sitting in darkness have seen a great light, and those sitting in the region and shadow of death, and on them a light has dawned. Speaking of Isaiah 9:1, where it says, the people walking in darkness will see a great light. Upon those dwelling in the land of the shadow of death, light will shine. And then in Matthew 5:16, Yeshua says, in the same way, let your light shine before men so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So again, these things are not just for you, they're for you to do so that others can see Yahweh doing this. So he's given us people to help along with some of these things, right? One, Shoftim v'Shotrim, judges and officers. Again, we're talking about the national leadership of Israel. Shofet is a judge, and that works in the judicial system. Okay, judgments, but what interpreting the law, what does the law say? Not making law, upholding the law. Interpreting it and giving rulings regarding that. That's the judges and the judicial system. Levi is the religious leadership and the civil servants. Okay, we're talking about the religious leadership of Israel, teaching the people the Torah and giving instructions on worship, and the civil servants, checking on the welfare of the people, doing these things. You could also consider the Levi'im, the doctors of the day, so all of this working together. And we have Navi, who is the prophet. Navi is the religious guidance and national direction. Many of the prophets that we read about, when we say a prophet, we think of, one person walking around talking person to person to person, and you have some of that, okay? But for the most part, the prophets were speaking mainly to Israel as a whole and calling on the national leadership of Israel to bring repentance for the nation, for the people. The prophets talked to the kings and the judges, and, the prophets aided these people in the national leadership of Israel. I'm not saying a prophet did not do things for individuals. Yes, they did. Okay. But the bigger picture here is the national leadership of Israel. But again, we've talked before about how the individuals have an impact on the national progress of the people. Okay. And then melech is the political leadership of the people. Now, as a side note, although Yahweh is the king for Israel, Scripture says that when they go into the land, they're going to desire an earthly king. So it was not Yahweh's desire for them to have an earthly king. He was their king. But Yahweh says, when you go into the land, you're going to reject me as your king, and you're going to want an earthly king. So when that happens, I'm going to give you some parameters to keep in mind. Yahweh wasn't saying, when you go in, you set up a king, and these are the guidelines. No, he said, when you go in, you're going to reject me, you're going to want a king. So when that happens, you're at least going to have some guidelines in that, right? Again, I chose another picture of sometimes Yahweh will let us have what we want, even if it's not what he desires for us, right? So back to this, Deuteronomy 16:18-20, Shoftim v'Shotrim, you are to appoint judges and officers, you are to appoint, right? Why? Well, guys, the judges, you could say, sat at the gates. They were the gatekeepers. What does a gatekeeper do? So if you sit at the gates to the city, this is what you allow into the city, and also what you allow out of the city. It's the coming and the going. It's the commerce. It's if someone's coming into the city, what are your intentions in our city today? Why are you here? What are you doing here? It's protecting the people. What is going to be done? This is why the markets were near the city gates, right? Because the people would come in, they would do this. And this is also a reminder of justice, because what was supposed to be on the doors and on the gates for the people of Israel? The Shema, right? The word of Yahweh is to be written on your gates. So this is where justice would come, where people would come for justice, for judgment. They would come to the gates because it's where the judges were. And the reminder of justice is supposed to be righteous justice. Okay, not perverted justice. And so the reminders of that was by the word that was right there with them. Zechariah 8:16-17 says, these are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to one another. Administer the judgment of truth and shalom in your gates. Do not let any of you devise evil in your hearts against your neighbor, and do not love false oaths, for I hate these things. It is a declaration of Adonai. And again, so back to this, we are to have justice, right? In verse 20, it says, justice, justice you must pursue so that you may live and possess the land Adonai your God is giving you. Now I put it this way. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof is what it says there. It's the same word repeated. Tzedek, tzedek, justice, justice. But that kind of tells us something. It says to pursue justice justly. We're to have justice done justly. In other words, do the right thing the right way. You cannot obtain justice if it's a matter of, just the means justify the end. Or the end justify the means, rather, is what I want to say. So you can't just say that, we can do whatever we want to do as long as we get the result that we want. No, do the right thing the right way. You pursue justice justly. You don't pervert justice to get justice, right? So in order to know what is justice, you have to have people who are trained in justice, trained in the word of Yahweh, trained in how to handle this, how to interpret this, so that there is justice done justly. Righteousness and justice, these words go together. It's the same thing. What you see in Genesis 18 and 19, Yahweh speaking of Abraham says that Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, for in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed, for I have made myself known to him, so that I will command his sons and his household after him to keep the way of Adonai. How did they keep the way of Adonai? By doing righteousness and justice. And then in Micah 6:8-9 says, he has told you, humanity, what is good and what Adonai is seeking from you. What is it? What is he seeking from us? To practice justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Elohim. See that? So again, this is all coming in together, okay? All these working together, and this is why we needed people to help keep us focused on these things. And they each had their own specialty in their own areas, which is why, you wouldn't go to a judge to ask him about something pertaining to the levy, or something pertaining to, so you go to the judge to say, hey, how am I supposed to bring this offering? I don't know, go talk to the Levite. This was not a matter of a Shoftim or Mishpatim or anything like that. So go talk to the Levite about that. So that was what the Levi'im were for, the religious leadership and the civil servants among Israel. Deuteronomy 17:9-12 says, come to the Levitical Kohanim and the judge in charge at that time. See, both of these things here, because there are some things that may cross over, and you will inquire and you will tell the sentence of judgment. And you are to act according to the sentence they tell you from that place Adonai chooses, and take care to do all that they instruct you. You are to act according to the instruction they teach you and the judgment they tell you. You must not turn aside from the sentence they tell you to the right or to the left. The man who acts presumptuously by not listening to the Kohen who stands to serve there before Adonai your God, or to the judge, that man must die. So you are to purge the evil from Israel. Again, it was important if you were making judgments that they know righteousness, that they know what is to happen there, okay? And that's why the Levi'im were to teach the people regarding the word of Yahweh, regarding the Torah. Matter of fact, there's in Leviticus 10 and 11, we have a very interesting phrase here, Vaydaber Yahweh el Aharon. So, and Yahweh says to Aaron, see, we don't have too many places where Yahweh speaks directly to Aaron. Normally, Yahweh speaks to Moshe and it says, tell Aaron, right? So here, Yahweh speaks to Aaron and he says, you are to make a distinction between the holy and the common and between the unclean and the clean. And you are to teach Bnei Israel, you are to teach the sons of Israel, all the statutes that Adonai has spoken through Moshe. So it was the job of the Kohanim, it was the job of the Levi'im to teach the people of Israel what the Torah says. Why? So that they know what it says, and so they can carry it out, so they can actually do it. Deuteronomy 33:10 says, they will teach Jacob your judgments and Israel your Torah. They will put incense on your nose and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Malachi 2:5-7. My covenant was with him for life and for shalom. I gave them to him for reverence, so he revered me, and he was awestruck by my name. Instruction of truth was in his mouth, and injustice was not found on his lips. In shalom and uprightness he walked with me, and he turned many from iniquity. For a Kohen's lips should safeguard knowledge, and Torah must be taught from his mouth, for he is a messenger of Adonai Tzevaot. See that? So as you're reading this, you go back and you understand the job of the Kohen included teaching the Torah to the people. And let's face it, if you went to the Kohen, you don't just want their opinion. You want to know, what does Yahweh have to say? You know, if I'm looking at something in the scripture and I'm not quite understanding it, I'm going to go to someone who has studied that to find out what it says, right? But that's what we're supposed to do. We need to work together on all that. Okay, so back to the national leadership of Israel. What about the prophet? The prophet had a role in the national leadership of Israel. So, an interesting side note, though, as you go through and you look at who all the prophets were, most of the prophets were Levites. Interesting. Most of the prophets that we find here were from the tribe of Levi. Why would that be important? Because we have prophets who were trained as a Levite to proclaim the prophetic words from Yahweh to the national leadership of Israel. So when a prophet stood before a king to declare the words of Yahweh, he was trained in what the word was so that he could discern what he was hearing and kind of say, no, this is what I'm supposed to say. And no, the Torah goes against this. And so again, matter of discernment and moving forward and learning. So the navi was religious guidance and national direction. Okay. They also spoke to the leaders in a collective manner. You know, they would speak to the people together. Although, like we said, there were times where individuals would seek out a prophet of Yahweh, and that's not a bad thing. Okay. So what does the man of God have to say, right? Speaking like Eliyahu, right? Elijah. So that's not a bad thing, but keep in mind though, that prophets were not to be considered and used as, let's just say, psychics and soothsayers. That's not what they were to be used for. It's not like, can you read my future? That's not necessarily what was going on here. That's not what it was about. Okay. It was about what was the heart of Yahweh for the people. Where was the direction for them? What was his heart in the midst of all these things, right? And so again, that played out in different ways for different people, but the goal is showing the goodness of Yahweh and the restoration among the people. Deuteronomy 18:9-13 says, when you enter the land Adonai your God is giving you, you are not to learn to do the abominations of those nations. There must not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or a fortune teller, a soothsayer, an omen reader, or a sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to Adonai, and because of these abominations, Adonai your God is driving them out from before you. You are to be blameless before Adonai your God. See, so again, a prophet was not a soothsayer. A prophet was not a fortune teller. A prophet was not a medium or a spiritist or a witch or anything like that. Okay. There were differentiation between all of these things. A prophet spoke on behalf of Yahweh, not one who was casting spells or doing these other things. Deuteronomy 18:18 says, I will raise up a prophet like you from among your brothers. We referenced this earlier, right? I will put my words in his mouth, and I will speak to them all that I command him. Now, whoever does not listen to my words that this prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call him into account. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet will die. So again, here's the warning. If you have a prophet who is saying, thus says Yahweh, when Yahweh didn't say, there's judgment coming for that person. All right. Jeremiah 14, verse 14 and 15 says, then Adonai says, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I did not send them, nor command them, nor did I speak to them. They are prophesying to you a lying vision, divination, futility, a delusion of their heart. Therefore, thus says Adonai, about the prophets who prophesy in my name, though I did not send them, yet they keep saying, sword and famine will never be in this land. By sword and famine will those prophets be consumed. Again, judgment coming on those who are speaking presumptuously in the name of Yahweh and saying things that he didn't say. Right? Yahweh sent me when he did not. Right? Ezekiel 13, 7 through 9 says, did you not see an empty vision and speak a false omen when you say, Adonai says, when I have not spoken? Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, because you have spoken falsely and prophesied lies, therefore, behold, I am against you. This declaration of Adonai. My hand will be against the prophets who see false visions and utter lying divinations. They will not remain in the assembly of my people, nor will they be recorded in the register of the house of Israel, nor enter into the land of Israel, and you will know I am Adonai. So again, Yahweh wasn't against the prophets. He was against the false prophets, right? He equipped those who were genuine prophets for him. And then we have the king, Melech, the political leadership of Israel. And again, keep in mind that Yahweh didn't say, I want you to have a king. He said, you're going to reject me and you're going to want a king. So when you do this, there are some guidelines to be done here. We see that in Deuteronomy 17, 14, and 15. Where it says, when you come to the land that Adonai your God is giving you, you possess it, you dwell in it, and you say, I will set a king over me like all the nations around me. You will indeed set over yourselves a king whom Adonai your God chooses. So see that? He says, you say you're going to want a king, but I'm going to give you that king. So one from among your brothers will be appointed as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you who is not your brother. So what's going on here? We are to guard ourselves. We're to guard our lives. We're to guard our hearts just as much as we guard the sanctity of a set-apart nation as a whole. See, so we're watching over ourselves, we're watching over our families, but in doing this, we are also watching over the nation. We're also watching over our brothers. We're also looking out for one another, right? We're learning to take the personal application of my relationship with Yahweh and walking with him and seeing how that affects others around us as well. Psalm 141, 3 and 4 says, set a guard, Adonai, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Let not my heart turn to any evil thing, to practice deeds of wickedness with men that work iniquity, nor let me eat of their delicacies. Proverbs 21, 23 says, whoever guards his mouth and his tongue keeps his soul out of trouble. That's pretty good advice, isn't it? 1 Corinthians 11, 31 and 32 says, for if we were judging ourselves thoroughly, we wouldn't be coming under judgment. When we are judged, we are being disciplined by Yahweh so that we might not be condemned along with the world. To kind of paraphrase that, it's a matter of, if we're looking within ourselves to make sure we're doing what is right, then we're not going to be judged with those that are doing wrong. So again, it's just a matter of looking in the mirror and being honest with that, right? So how do we do this? Well, we uphold righteousness as a nation when we all as individuals submit our personal lives to Yahweh. We uphold righteousness as a nation when us as individuals live righteously. And how do we do that? We learn to follow him. We give ourselves to him, and we work in that ways. We see this in Romans 6, 16 to 19, where it says, don't you know that if you present yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, then of the one whom you are obeying, you are slaves, whether to sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to being made righteous. By God's grace, you who were once slaves to sin obeyed from your heart the pattern of teaching to which you were exposed. And after you had been set free from sin, you became enslaved to righteousness. I'm using popular language because your human nature is weak. For just as you used to offer your various parts as slaves to impurity and lawlessness, which led to more lawlessness, so now offer your various parts as slaves to righteousness, which leads to being made holy, set apart for Yahweh. So again, that which you submit to, you serve, and it replicates. So when we submit ourselves to Yahweh, we're walking in his righteousness, and we're learning to walk with him continually, and we're perpetuating that, and we're cultivating that, and we're learning to do all of that with one another. So in all of that, this Parsha ends with ki Ki ta'aseh hayashar be'enei Yahweh. And you should do what is yashar, what is straight, just, and upright in the eyes of Yahweh. So this parsha is ending with upholding righteousness, living righteously, being set straight with him, and walking with him, keeping order in our own lives, in our homes, and in the nation, so that it honors and glorifies him. And so we're a people set apart. So that means there's going to be opposition to the world, but the world is going to look at you and testify how different you are and say, that's got to be Yahweh doing that. Okay. Well, that's all I've got for you today, guys. I hope this has been encouraging, challenging for you. Hope it's been a blessing. And if it has, please share it. Whatever avenue you watch or you listen to these teachings, please share them, help get them out there. And if it's blessed you, it's going to bless somebody else too, right? So help us in that. And if this has been a blessing to you, then please consider making a donation to help us continue putting these teachings out there. We can only do that because you enable us to do so. All right. So until next time, guys, be blessed, be a blessing, and shalom.